I still hear the laughter echoing in that stale conference room, even now. They'd called an emergency strategy session, which was code for Olivia, defend your crazy idea one last time before we bury it forever. My slide deck trembled in my hands as I explained how a single mother from a forgotten Midwest mill town could disrupt an entire industry with a smartphone and a shoestring budget. When I finally uttered the word plan, the partners exchanged smirks, rolled their eyes, and leaned back as if they were watching a slow-motion car crash they'd predicted from the start. The worst part wasn't the ridicule, it was the silence that followed, an airless, condescending hush that said bless your heart, but you're out of your depth. My cheeks burned, my throat clenched, and the room blurred behind a film of tears I refused to blink away. I closed my laptop, gathered my scattered notes, and walked out before they could escort me. That night, alone on the subway, I promised myself that the next time they heard my name would be from a source they couldn't ignore. 16 months later, I slid the freshly printed issue of Forbes across the polished mahogany of that very same boardroom table. My face of brow furrowed, eyes unflinching, stared back at them from the cover. The headline read, "The Unexpected Architect of a $1 billion Revolution." Their eyes widened, their smirks dissolved, and for the first time, no one dared to fill the silence. If you've ever experienced something like this, please hit like and subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. My name is Olivia Porter, and I'm 31 years old, or at least I was on the day that magazine hit newsstands. I grew up in Riverton, Illinois, a factory town that smelled of burnt metal and diesel every dawn. Dad worked double shifts forging steel beams. Mom stitched prom dresses in our dining room, her sewing machine rattling long after midnight. In our house, ambition meant a steady paycheck and overtime approval, nothing more. But I was the kid who camped by the library's only computer, dreaming of code and venture capital the way other girls dreamed of front-row concert tickets. High school guidance counselors told me those dreams were nice but suggested bookkeeping or clerical work, something practical for a girl with your background. I swallowed every condescending smile, every subtle reminder that Riverton's children weren't meant for Silicon Valley, and filed them in the back of my mind like rusted daggers I would one day melt into armor. I earned a scholarship to Northwestern University, packed 2 thrift store suitcases, and waved goodbye to the smokestacks. Chicago felt like another planet, skyscrapers instead of silos, venture meetups instead of PTA bake sales. Between lectures on data science and part-time barista shifts, I coded prototype apps in the dorm laundry room, where the Wi-Fi was strongest and the washers masked the sound of my typing at 3 a.m. Everything accelerated senior year when my roommate, Mei Ling, burst in waving an article about supply chain labor abuses. Lev, what if we built a platform that tracks every raw material, every wage, in real time? Transparent from farm to phone? The idea crackled like live wire. We sketched flowcharts on pizza boxes, pitched professors, and, against all odds, secured a tiny seed grant, just enough to cover cloud servers and a handful of ramen dinners. My parents didn't understand. Dad furrowed his brow on FaceTime. You're saying people will pay you to snoop on their own factories? Mom worried about student loan deferrals and health insurance. I couldn't blame them. In Riverton, you didn't gamble on dreams, you clocked in on time. Their doubt fueled me, though. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you've ever felt underestimated. 6 months post-graduation, we relocated to a windowless co-working basement in Brooklyn. Our platform, ClearPath, scraped satellite data, shipping manifests, and worker wage ledgers to expose labor violations before the next scandal broke. It was scrappy, glitchy, and way ahead of legal precedent. We needed capital, mentorship, and partnerships with brands brave, or desperate, enough to bet on transparency. Enter Marshall Gates, a charismatic angel investor with perfect teeth and a Rolodex of Fortune 500 CEOs. He'd seen our pitch deck online and invited us to brunch in Soho. Between mimosas, he promised a $500,000 seed round, office space, and intros to the right people. The catch? He insisted on a 51% stake. Founders were visionaries, but operators like him turned visions into IPOs. Mei Ling hesitated, I felt my childhood daggers turning to ice in my stomach. We declined politely and walked out into the February slush. A week later, Gates announced a groundbreaking transparency startup he'd funded, PathClear, identical name reversed, identical mission repackaged with flashier graphics. One of our junior developers had jumped ship to PathClear, taking snippets of our source code with him. Investors ghosted, saying the market was crowded. Press ignored our emails. I smashed a ceramic mug against the office wall and screamed into my scarf. That Saturday, May closed her laptop, cheeks glistening. Liv, maybe it's time to go corporate. We gave it everything. Silence settled like dust. I stared at the single fluorescent bulb flickering above us. Everything? My voice cracked. Everything is when the factory siren wails at 5 a.m. and Dad's back is so knotted he can't tie his boots. Everything is Mom sewing under a bare bulb so I could be here. We're not done. The next morning I arrived to find May's desk empty. She'd accepted a 6-figure offer from a conglomerate implementing, ironically, ethical sourcing. A forward text blinked on my phone, I'm sorry. It's survival. Tears stung, but cold determination crystallized beneath. For 9 grinding months I was a team of 1, sleeping beside servers to reset them manually, ferrying cold email pitches to inboxes that never replied. I survived on dollar slice pizza and the stubborn conviction that truth, once visible, cannot be unseen. If this part hit you hard, leave a comment and tell me what you would have done. One hazy dawn, I collapsed onto the co-working couch, phone buzzing with overdue balance notices. Scrolling mindlessly, I saw a tweet storm accusing a beloved athleisure giant of child labor in Bangladesh. Stock plummeted, hashtags trended, and executives scrambled for optics. On impulse, I replied from ClearPath's dormant account, "We can prove your supply chain, or fix it, within 72 hours. DM for a demo." I tossed the phone aside, certain no one would answer. 4 hours later, a terse email arrived from their VP of Sustainability. "If you're serious, be in Portland tomorrow at 10 a.m. I pawned my DSLR, bought a red-eye ticket, and spent the flight coding a custom dashboard. In a glass-walled war room, I projected satellite heat maps cross-referenced with payroll anomalies. The room fell silent. They cut me a 6-month contract on the spot. When the press release dropped, ClearPath servers crashed under traffic. Venture inboxes reopened. Marshall Gates tried to connect on LinkedIn. I let the request rot. Funding snowballed, an $8 million Series A, then $60 million Series B led by a firm who'd once left my emails unread. I hired a team, reinstated the developer who'd defected, on probation and a 20-page NDA. Our dashboards powered renegotiated supply chains across 3 continents, sparing thousands of workers from wage theft. Yet public validation still eluded me. Gates' PathClear hogged headlines, flaunting its first-to-market myth. I learned he planned a flashy launch at Tech World Expo in Vegas, unveiling a proprietary whistleblower tool. My pulse flared. We had built that feature, but never released it, fearing reprisals against workers. Gates had lifted it from stolen code. Revenge wasn't in my business plan, but justice was. I gathered my engineers for a 96-hour sprint, encrypting the tool end-to-end so whistleblowers remained anonymous even from us. We open-sourced it the morning of his keynote. On stage, Gates clicked to reveal his exclusive feature only to find social feeds flooded with #ClearPathBetter. That night, I walked the strip, neon glare reflecting off damp eyes, not from defeat, but relief. I called Dad. "Remember when you said people don't pay to snoop their own factories?" He chuckled through the speaker. "I was wrong, pumpkin. Proud of you. Come home soon, Mom's got the sewing machine humming for your old room curtains." I swallowed a sob, gazing at a billboard flashing ethics is profit. If this story moved you, hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it. 18 months later, Forbes requested an interview. I almost declined. Press cycles chew you up, but the journalist's questions pierced deeper than hype. Why transparency? Why now? I spoke of Riverton's smokestacks, Dad's slipped discs, Mom's calloused fingertips, and the teachers who dismissed my impractical dreams. The article framed me not as a wunderkind but as the stubborn daughter of blue-collar grit who'd rewritten the rules. When the cover proofs arrived, I booked a meeting with the firm that had once rolled their eyes. Walking into that boardroom, I felt every rejected pitch hover like ghosts behind me. I slid the magazine forward. Silence again, but this time, it tasted sweet. Olivia, the senior partner rasped, "Let's discuss strategic partnerships." I smiled, recalling the Subway promise. "Perhaps," I said, "but first, let's discuss respect. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you've ever felt underestimated." Today, ClearPath employs 1,200 people and audits supply chains for half the Fortune 100. We've redirected $840 million in reclaimed wages to workers who once sewed in silence. But the victory I savor most happens quietly, a nightly text from Mom, machines off, hands resting, love you, and Dad's photo standing tall at the plant's early retirement ceremony. I keep that cracked ceramic mug on my desk, its jagged edges fused with gold lacquer in the Japanese art of kintsugi, because broken things, mended with love, become stronger at the seams. So did I. So can you. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from if this felt familiar. The months after the magazine cover felt like waking up in a new universe, but even galaxies have gravity, and mine started tugging me back to unfinished business. I'd promised my investors an aggressive global rollout, so I found myself bouncing between time zones like a pinball. Sao Paulo on Monday for a cocoa supply audit, Jakarta on Wednesday to sign a pilot with a textile collective, then Geneva on Friday to testify before the WTO's Committee on Ethical Sourcing. Jet lag blurred into a constant mid-afternoon haze, and some nights my hotel room ceiling pulsed as if the fluorescent lights in Brooklyn were still flickering above me. 1:03 a.m. in Zurich, I opened my inbox to a single-line message from Mei Ling, "Congrats on Forbes. You won." I stared at the blinking cursor beneath her words, memories ricocheting, our pizza box diagrams, her tear-stained apology, the empty desk. My fingers hovered, heavy with things unsaid. Finally, I typed, "It was never about winning." I hit send, then closed the laptop and let silence settle in the dark. If this part hit you hard, leave a comment and tell me how you'd answer an old friend who walked away. A year later I stood on Riverton High's cracked basketball court, the aroma of diesel still hanging in the dawn air. The principal, Mrs. Buckner, once the guidance counselor who'd guided me toward clerical stability, ushered me toward a mic beneath the backboard. 100 seniors shifted on the bleachers, half asleep, half skeptical. I cleared my throat. "I used to think this town set limits," I began, voice trembling. Turns out, it gave me steel in my spine. I told them about ClearPath's first failure, about PathClear's theft, about sleeping beside servers. I ended with a promise. Every Riverton graduate accepted to a STEM program would get a ClearPath scholarship and a paid summer internship, no essay, no GPA filter, just proof of relentless curiosity. A cheer sparked in the back row and rolled forward like thunder. Mrs. Buckner wiped a tear, and for a heartbeat the factory sirens sounded almost like church bells. That afternoon Dad grilled burgers in the backyard while Mom spread gingham over the picnic table she'd sewn when I was 5. "Remember that old machine?" she asked, patting the faded fabric. "It's still my best ally." I laughed, feeling childhood loop into the present, threads connecting past to now. Dad raised a bottle of root beer. "To Eli's," he said. We clinked glass. For the first time in years, I inhaled without the weight of the next flight in my chest. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you've ever felt underestimated. Success breeds shadows. Just as ClearPath's Series C round closed at $180 million, a subpoena landed on my desk, Marshall Gates v. ClearPath Technologies, alleging misappropriation of proprietary algorithms. The irony tasted bitter. My attorneys smirked. The claim was flimsy, but Gates didn't need to win, he needed to slow us long enough for PathClear to catch up. Depositions stretched over weeks in oak-paneled rooms smelling of stale coffee and corporate fear. Gates sat across from me, manicured fingers steepled, eyes glimmering with performative regret. "Nothing personal," he whispered during a recess, breath scented with wintermint gum. "It's all leverage." I felt the old fire ignite behind my ribs. I leaned in. "You call it leverage, I call it proof you're still behind me." Outside, paparazzi flashes burst like fireworks. Reporters lobbed questions. Is ClearPath losing ground? Is the transparency bubble bursting? I answered none, saving oxygen for the courtroom. But every headline nicked at employee morale. Slack channels buzzed with worry, engineers canceled vacations. I gathered the team in our sunlit atrium. "Truth isn't a bubble," I said, voice echoing off glass. "It's bedrock. And bedrock doesn't burst." Applause swelled, shaky at first, then roaring. Still, at night, I lay awake counting worst-case scenarios instead of sheep. 3 weeks into the trial, a junior analyst named Carlos Nunez knocked on my office door clutching a USB drive and shaking. "I think you need to see this." He'd scraped public filings and dark web chatter linking PathClear to shell companies funneling hush payments to factories flagged for child labor. My pulse hammered. If verified, it turned Gates's lawsuit into a smokescreen masking crimes. We worked in secret, cross-checking data until dawn. When proof solidified, I faced a decision: leak it to the press and watch Gates burn, or hand it to the Department of Labor and trust the system. Revenge whispered for the first option. Responsibility begged the second. I thought of the kintsugi mug, stronger at the seams, gold in every crack. At 9 a.m., we emailed the evidence bundle to the DOL and copied Gates's legal team. An hour later, PathClear withdrew its lawsuit to focus on internal restructuring. Stock plummeted 40% by market close. I walked the Brooklyn waterfront that night, watching lights ripple across the East River. May's text flashed again in memory: "You won." But this time winning felt like choosing restraint when claws itched for blood. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from if this felt familiar. Amid lawsuits and launch cycles, romance seemed like vapor, visible for a second, then gone. Then came Dr. Aidan Clark, a behavioral economist invited to audit our incentive models. He challenged every assumption, scribbling equations on glass walls while recounting Maya Angelou verses by heart. One evening, while calibrating worker bonus algorithms, he glanced over spreadsheets and said, "Numbers are maps, but stories are compasses. You, Olivia, navigate with both." I laughed, too loud, too relieved, and spilled iced coffee on his sneakers. He just grinned, peeled off his soggy sock, and kept debating labor elasticity. 2 months later we found ourselves in Kyoto at a sustainability summit, marveling at lanterns floating across the Como River. He turned to me under a Vermilion bridge. "I've run every regression," he whispered, "and my confidence interval says I love you." I snorted, then kissed him while tourists applauded. Love didn't soften my edges, it sanded them just enough to let light through. Some nights we argued about growth curves versus human limits, ending with whiteboard doodles and apologies in green marker. Other nights we sat on the fire escape, counting sirens and sharing silent midnight ramen. Success felt less sharp when someone held the other end of the blade. 2 years post-Forbes, NASDAQ screens glowed with CLRPT. I rang the opening bell flanked by Mom, Dad, and Aiden, my hand trembling around the gavel. Shares opened 27% above target price, valuing ClearPath at $6.4 billion. Confetti rained, cameras flashed, analysts prophesied the era of radical visibility. But as champagne corks popped, protesters gathered outside, factory workers from Shenzhen to Dhaka live streaming on phones, chanting in 10 languages, "Transparency is action, not profit." Their signs pricked my conscience: "Show us your ledger. Audit your own wages." They were right, clear data meant little without fair pay downstream. I excused myself from CNBC, slipped past security, and waded into the crowd. A Bangladeshi organizer named Nasreen Begum confronted me, eyes blazing. Your reports got our factory flagged, but clients pulled orders instead of fixing conditions. We lost jobs. Now what? The truth sliced deeper than Gates's betrayal. I invited Nasreen and her committee to ClearPath's HQ. Over 3 days we drafted the action share model. Brands had 90 days after each violation to implement remediation or face public scorecard downgrades that investors could not ignore. We built a real-time ticker displaying wage restitution paid, viewable by anyone with Wi-Fi. When the ticker hit its first $1 million, Nasreen pressed the button herself. She smiled, tears catching in fluorescent light. I realized redemption isn't a climax, it's a continuous ledger crediting courage daily. If this story moved you, hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it. The world shifted again when a Category 5 hurricane obliterated garment hubs in the Philippines, severing supply chains we'd just stabilized. ClearPath's dashboards went crimson with disruptions, wages halted as factories collapsed. I chartered cargo planes of relief supplies, but logistics buckled. Exhaustion clawed at me, grief for lost lives tangled with the frustration of unrealized prevention. Then Riverton's old steel mill offered a lifeline. Its blast furnaces had cooled years ago, but its logistics yard and rail spurs remained intact. I convinced the board to retrofit the site into a rapid response distribution hub combining 3D printing for spare machine parts and drone-launched medical packets. Within weeks, aid flowed through a town once written off as industrial relic. Dad donned a safety vest to oversee loading docks, Mom managed volunteer shifts, her sewing circle stitching makeshift shelters from recycled tarp. Riverton's skyline glowed anew, smokestacks swapped for solar arrays. The town that forged my backbone now forged relief for half the planet. Yet Wall Street grumbled, rapid response centers drained margins. Shareholders demanded quarterly wins, not humanitarian moonshots. Our stock dipped, pundits predicted leadership shakeups. In a tense board meeting, directors suggested scaling back disaster aid. I placed a photo of the shattered Philippine factory on the table, mangled beams, a child's shoe in the rubble. If this is a cost center, I said, voice steady, I'll resign tomorrow and fund it myself. Silence thickened. Then Nasreen, now a worker liaison board member, spoke, ClearPath without clear hearts is nothing. The motion to expand aid passed unanimously, and the stock rebounded on headlines of capitalism with a conscience. On the 5th anniversary of ClearPath's founding, I received a handwritten letter on ivory stationery. The return address, Mei Ling, Tokyo. Hands shaking, I unfolded it. Live. I spent years optimizing profits for people who never see their factories. Your face on Forbes haunted me because I knew I'd chosen comfort over conviction. I'm launching a circular economy startup, and I need a partner who remembers coding in a laundry room at 3 a.m. Will you join our seed round? With respect, May. I stared at the words until tears blurred ink. I typed a reply, attached a term sheet, and wired the first $2 million before the sun set. Some fractures deserve gold lacquer, others deserve second chances. That night Aiden and I lit paper lanterns on our roof, each bearing a wish. Mine read, may transparency outlive me. His, may love be the data point that never lies. We released them into the city sky, watching twin lights drift until they merged with constellations. So here I am, Olivia Porter, daughter of Riverton, woman of countless scars stitched with gold, speaking to you across pixels. ClearPath now spans 42 countries, but impact isn't numbers on an earnings call, it's the cashier in Manila who bought her first laptop with back pay restitution. The Riverton grad coding open source fixes at a desk once reserved for Silicon Valley royalty. The factory foreman who greets dawn without fear of hidden cameras because he knows fair pay is no longer a favor but a standard. And me? I still keep that kintsugi mug on my desk, but beside it stands a new relic, the first lantern Aiden and I released, retrieved from a Brooklyn tree, its paper torn yet glowing with dried candle wax. Broken, mended, illuminated, just like us. If you've stayed with me this far, leave a comment telling me where you're watching from and whether you believe broken things can truly heal. And if your own plan elicits eye rolls, remember, sometimes the quiet promise you make on a subway at midnight becomes the headline that changes the world.